Hello and happy Friday, everybody. Great to have you with us today. For those of you who've attended before, you probably know who I am. But in case any of you are new to our platform and our crowdcasts, my name is Maria Marquis, and here at Coda, I focus on customer education. So helping people find ways to solve the problems that they're trying to solve using Coda and hopefully having a little bit of fun along the way. Now, luckily for all of you, we are doing this new series that we call Maker Stories, where we talk to different Coda makers, take a look at the doc, and get the whole inside scoop and story behind how they made it, why they made it, and kind of how you can get started with that as well. And today I'm joined by Joel. Joel, do you want to introduce yourself to the group so they can know a little bit about you?
Yeah, I can do that. My name is Joel Runyon. I run a company called Impossible, and I think today we're talking about how I go out and take on different challenges and build experiences through something called my Impossible list. And we have a template on Coda now that we're going to walk through.
Yeah.
That's all
And if
right.
any totally. And if anybody wants to snag Joel's doc, I just popped it over there into chat. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started and take a look at Joel's awesome doc. Over on the right, there's that chat field. You can use that to get in touch with us at any point in time today. Please feel free to use it. But if you've got a question for either myself or for Joel, please just use the Ask a Question button along the bottom of the screen. That's a great way so that nothing gets lost and we can make sure we answer anything that's on your mind. And if you're not sure what your questions are, but you're just kind of curious about what other people are thinking, you can upvote and downvote questions in there so we can get a good idea of what you're looking for. So without further ado, let's talk about this doc. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Joel, if you would just be a wonderful, kind human being and let me know when you can see it, that would be great.
There you go.
All right, fantastic. And I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger so we can focus on it. So I think it makes sense, Joel, for us to just start off by talking about what is an impossible list.
All right. So, do you want me to give a little bit about my background, how I came up with this?
Yeah, that'd be great. I love that.
Cool. So, so my whole story and Impossible story kind of starts 8 or 9 years ago. I graduated school, got a double major in business and Spanish, and graduated in the middle of a recession. And it was not a good time, if anybody remembers that, to try and go get a job. And so at that point, I'd basically done all the things in life you're supposed to do. I'd gone to school, got good grades, learned another language. I did track and field and basketball. I did a semester abroad. I did all the things I was supposed to do. I got through, graduation, great GPA. And then the script that I was supposed to follow is basically like, go get a job. And I graduated in 2009 and couldn't get anything. I was applying at places I really wanted to work at, heard nothing back. Places I would just take a job at, heard nothing back. I started applying at places like Target and Starbucks, and Starbucks wouldn't call me back to make coffee.
Oh, no.
So I was basically in my parents' basement for months, and I was poking around on the internet trying to figure out what to do with my life. I eventually got a part-time job working at UPS for the holiday rush. I worked, we were supposed to go out for 6 weeks. The economy was so bad, I only went out for 3. And then they fired us after Christmas because it was seasonal. And then I'm sitting in my parents' basement and looking at my life and being like, is this all I have to show? This is, I thought my life would be different. I thought I could do, go to school and learn these things. Then I get a job, and I had people, friends. I was looking at traveling the world, or someone quit their job and moved to Thailand, and someone else started a business. And I was like, I'd love to do all these things, but right now everything feels impossible. And I was like writing out all these different things that I wanted to do with my life, and they all just seemed impossible. And I was unemployed. I was living in my parents' basement, so I couldn't travel. I couldn't start a business. I didn't know anything. And I kept going through this list, and it was just on a piece of paper at first. And I had reasons for why I couldn't do all these different things on my list. But then I got to one at the bottom, and it said, run a triathlon. And I didn't have a reason why I couldn't start exercising and start training and start running around the block and get on my bike and ride around the block and start training for a triathlon. I didn't know anything about triathlons. I'd never run more than a 5K at that point in my life. But I was like, okay, I guess I'll go do that. And so that was kind of the start of the Impossible List and Impossible. And so I went out and I trained for a couple months to do an indoor triathlon, because if you're not familiar with triathlons, run, bike, swim. And I was so scared of swimming in open water that I thought I would drown, that I was like, I'm going to do an indoor triathlon because that seems safer. And so I did that. And there was a moment when I finished the race. It was an indoor triathlon at Lifetime Fitness. It was a 10-minute swim, a 30-minute bike ride on like one of their exercise bikes, and then a 20-minute run on their treadmill. And then you just added up the distance that you went. And I finished that, and as silly as it sounds, when I finished it, I had this moment where I was like, you spent so much time telling yourself that this was impossible, and you just did it. So if that's true, what other things are you telling yourself that are or seem impossible right now, that if you train for it, if you worked at it, you could go do? So a lot of people will compare this to a bucket list, but I prefer calling it Impossible List because I look at it differently. A bucket list, a lot of times you start off with one big list of everything you ever want to do, and then you try to rush and do it before you kick the bucket. The Impossible List is much more focused on like, what can you do right now? Where can you start right now? And then how does that expand as you push yourself further and further? You end up putting things on your Impossible List and doing things that you would never imagined you would do if you just try to write out all the cool things you could ever think of right now on a bucket list. My example is that I ran an ultra marathon on every continent in the world.
Wow.
But when I started this thing, I never even imagined running a half marathon. I literally remember running a 5K and seeing people do 15K and thinking to myself, that's excessive. And so an Impossible List really challenges you to push your limits, do something impossible, and let your kind of limits expand with you once you start knocking these things off your list.
Awesome. I'm so inspired right now. I'm thinking about like, okay, what are all the things I need to do? I need to make a copy of this doc right away afterwards and start populating it. That's awesome. Very cool. So let's take a look at the Impossible List. So this template obviously has kind of your story in a very truncated way, but let's just jump in. What I love about this doc is it's super straightforward. Like it's very tactical, and it's really easy to get started with it. So can you talk us through kind of how it's structured and why you think about building your Impossible List in this way?
Yeah, so I would say I break the Impossible List down into different categories of your life. And that's kind of how I've done it. And Coda lets me do a few things with it that I couldn't do normally. It was just for a long time, it was just literally a list. And that is, you mentioned it was it's straightforward. One of the nice things about Impossible List is like you can make it as complicated as you want. You can make it really simple. And the goal is to not spend so much time even making the list, but checking them off. And then also it's a good record for you. So like when you go through other hard stuff, you can look back on something and be like, remember that one time I was running an ultra marathon in the Arctic in Finland and ran out of water? That happened and I made it through that. I can make it through this other stuff that's happening. And so there's kind of a dual purpose of one, creating it, but also using it as a form of reference to build resilience and grit over time. So, so the way I broke this down, there might be a couple more categories. I'm going off your screen and I can't see it right here. So
here we go.
So I broke it down into different categories of life, and there's a lot here, and it's biased towards my interests, but you could really make this whatever you want. I have life, fitness, travel, minimalism, adrenaline rushes because I'm a little bit of a junkie.
I love that.
Events to attend, languages, business, and like miscellaneous. So just random stuff that I'd be like, that'd be fun to do. So the way, I just took those areas of my life and I started off with a couple different things. Maybe a few of them were small, and then maybe there's one big inspiring thing that I thought they could build to. For example, when I started the triathlons, like I literally just did run an indoor triathlon. That was the first thing. And then I finished that and I was like, oh, there's other pieces here. And so that's when you start building out those sections of like, okay, I want to do a sprint triathlon, an Olympic triathlon, a half Ironman, an Ironman. Now I'm tricked myself into running. I guess I'm going to start adding running goals now. And so the point here is not to build out a list that is final from the start, but to start small and to start in ways it's like, what are things that have been bugging you, or things that you've been curious about, or things that you've been wanting to do, but you've just been like, maybe someday, maybe that's for someone else. I can't do that. And start with like the smallest rung possible. And then maybe like, if you can imagine like the next steps beyond that, do a couple more. But for me, I just started with, and this has evolved over time. So you're seeing more of like a mid-stage impossible list right now, rather than like an early stage impossible.
You've done your 5K, you've done your 10K.
Yeah. And so I basically set it up to be like, okay, here's the things I want to do. And it's not 5,000 things long. It's a dozen maybe, right? And it's split up into a few different categories. And I'm going to pick one and I'm going to go do it. And then when I do that, the one thing maybe a feature request for Coda. The one thing, with Impossible is when I'm done with something, you strike it through it, and you see the logo for Impossible is Impossible, and it's animated with the line struck through it. So one of the quotes at the top is, "It's always seems impossible until it's done." And so that's the goal here. So it's like, once it's done, you strike it through, like you strike through the logo, and you move on to the next thing. And so,
logo there.
Yeah. So I don't, So if we go back down, I don't know exactly where you want me to start, but I can kind of walk you through how I started growing mine. And then people's can, like, everybody's is going to be different, right?
Totally.
Like, for example, minimalism. Like, I went through a phase where I was like, I'm going to go super minimal. And I got down to like 70 things and had like 2 backpacks. And then I kind of got over that. So I was like, I'm good. But it was a good experience. And so, like, minimalism is kind of like, I probably do more there and, like, archive that category, or, sync that down. I'm not actively adding the minimalism right now, but I am actively into fitness and business milestones right now, because those are kind of areas that I'm focused on. So, the functionality is really straightforward. It's you pick out half dozen, maybe a dozen things you really want to do. Try to break them out into different areas of your life, because if you just focus on like, hey, this is all going to be money, like it's really draining. It's not exciting. And what you find is that if you have multiple categories, one of my other favorite quotes is, how you do anything is how you do everything. And so if you're able to start, how you do anything is how you do everything. And so for me, once I started learning how to push my limits in triathlon and be like, I can go farther than I thought, I started thinking about my job differently. And I started thinking about maybe I could start a business. And then I started thinking about, how do I push myself in my business differently? And then, like, we were trying to give back to charity. So it's like, okay, I'm doing a little bit here and there, but how do I make that bigger? So by having these different areas of your life, you can kind of, I visualize it like this circle. Like, if you literally have like a circle of what you think your limits are, and you start kind of poking in these different areas of your life at parts of the circle, and you start finding that the circle expands. And, if you keep expanding, one direction, and you just do all fitness stuff, like, you kind of have a weird shaped circle that's like becoming, lopsided, if you will. And one of the cool things about this is you can easily visualize. You're like, hey, Joel, you've knocked off like all the minimalism things, but there's still a lot of stuff as far as like giving back you need to do. Like, it helps you refocus, and it gives you a good visualization of that. The other piece here that's kind of cool is that you have the status column, which is literally just like, hey, are you working on this now? Is this active, or is this done? So you can quickly see and remind yourself of the things that you've accomplished, which is really nice. And then the dates, like, when did you finish this? And then I have a blog, so I typically try to keep online records of when I've done these. And so I'll just link out to either, my journal. Like, it could be something personal. It could be an Instagram post. It could be a blog post, or even just sometimes a race result where you can easily, quickly reference it. And so, that is the other piece, where it's like, part of this is planning, And part of this is keeping a record of the things that you've done. So when you're doing other hard stuff, when you're pushing yourself again, and you get to the point where you want to give up or you want to quit, you start realizing like, oh, I can do more. And if
Yeah.
you need to inspire, you can inspire yourself and you get that momentum from yourself. So
Yeah.
that's the quick, super fast run through.
I love it.
But we can dive into a little bit more if you have questions or
Yeah,
if
for sure.
people are wondering how this actually works.
Yeah, and one thing I will say that what you just said I really love is this whole like link and completion date, because in so many ways progress begets more progress.
Mm.
And what you've done here is you've like built in this ability for you to almost like time travel back to those great memories of like, oh yeah, I did do that thing. And I did work in that way, which I think is really great.
Well,
Looks like
it's also interesting to be able to like what you said about momentum right there, and
Mhm.
progress begets more progress. Like one of these things, like having a nice visual, like if you just have a list, it can get lost. Like
Mhm.
people can write the stuff on paper, whatever. But what's really nice about it here is like you can just easily filter. Hey, what are all the things in my fitness space if I really want to focus on that category that I haven't done yet?
Yeah.
Boom. What am I doing? And just jump in and work on that. And it's also the other thing about this is that you never get to say I'm bored again. Like if
Yeah.
you're bored, just come here and figure out one of the things on the list that you haven't done yet and go do it, because there's always more stuff to do. And if you're finding that, hey, I knocked out all of my minimalism goals and I'm done with that category, but it's still really interesting to me, like take some time to like figure out or imagine what it would be like to continue to expand that. And so
Yeah.
that's yeah, that's why the date and the organization of this is really nice,
Mhm.
because it gives you a visual. And what you actually end up doing is this becomes a database for stories that you've told over the
Yeah.
last 6-8 years of your life. And one of the things I brushed over this in the beginning is that one of the books that made me want to start Impossible and start pushing my limits was about an author. He had written a memoir and they were turning it into a movie, and he realized he had to edit the memoir to make it work for the movie. And he
Mhm.
realized that a lot of the things that he was doing to edit the memoir, he could actually do in his real life. He could look at how his character, basically himself in real life, is looking at challenges, is looking at opportunities, and is looking, on how to be more. Same things you would do to a character in a book to make him more interesting, or things you can do to yourself in real life to make you more
Yeah.
interesting. And so this gives you a real clear vision of like, hey, I'm feeling a little bored. Maybe I don't have as much stuff as I want going on. And it gives you a real actionable item to start on. And
Yeah.
instead of just being like, well, I don't have any ideas, I don't know what to do, like you have traction and you have something
Mhm.
to work off of.
Yeah, I'm actually going to make a copy of this doc just so we can do some playing around with it, because I
Okay.
think the idea of like being able to really make it your own is super valuable. Also, folks, remember that there's no such thing as an interruption in these sessions. If you've got a question, you can always just pop it right on in to either chat or the ask a question option. Either or is totally fine, so you don't have to worry for us by that. So one of the things as far as like the architecture, what I think is so beautiful about the simplicity of this doc is we've got that the actual list with all of things where we've been playing around today, but then you've got this little area where you can really make it yours. So like Joel was saying, these were the categories that meant the most to him at a certain given point in time. But when you make your own copy, so you can start pushing your own limits and your own boundaries, you could be like, oh, you know what? For me, maybe I don't want adrenaline rushes. Maybe I want peaceful, oh, if I could only spell, peaceful moments. And like, oh, and then I want peaceful moments to be like a different color, so I could go ahead and choose to highlight that differently. Maybe I want it to be something like that, or add some different conditional formatting. But you can do as much as you want here. You could also add things like, oh, I also really want to work on let's see, cooking. I'm really trying to master pasta making right now. That's my big
Mm.
thing that I'm working on. So you can go ahead and be able to add those things there, and then maybe you want to change up the status a little bit. Maybe you don't want active completed. Maybe you want to change the names of this or add another one. You can do the same thing to make it yours. And also, like Joel was saying, these are the columns that made the most sense to him, how he was thinking about managing his work and his life and his goals. But you could also add even more columns. Like maybe you wanted to add a column that was something I was thinking about. You were talking about Instagram posts. Maybe you want to have an image column where you can go ahead and upload images right here and then kind of just slide through, be able to see all of them in one moment and being able to have that ability, which might be kind of fun as far as things.
I'm gonna have to update mine now.
Hey, there you go. Yeah, and if we want to get even more fun about that, let's go ahead and just add the image here. You could then be like, oh, you know what? I want to make a view that's called, let's call it memory mode. I'm just making this up right now. Memories. You could make a view of that impossible list. So let's just do slash, and we'll do a detail view is the one I'm looking for. And we're going to make it of the impossible list. And we'll go ahead and just close that side bit. And now we can actually change this up a bit. So I could go, all right, I want to customize my layout by just clicking that little shish kebab. And then we could choose different styles. Maybe this one feels really good because it's got some images. So here we have changed someone's life for the better. We could also then show the hidden columns and move the image up here so we actually see the images in kind of this flip book style, which might be really fun, depending on what you're looking for, right? If I'm in active mode, I'm in the list, I'm taking a look at like, what am I bored by? I'm bored by this part. Great. I'm going to try and figure out how to make fig gorgonzola ravioli. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and buy the ingredients right now. Or am I in memory mode where I want to be able to revisit all the things that I've done? You could even filter this to just be showing you the completed things, right? Like show me a filter where the status is completed. Like I only want to be here resting on my laurels about how awesome those things were. The other thing that might be kind of fun to add here is this idea of being able to think about like your category and your balance. Because what you were saying, Joel, so much about like that circle, right? How am I balancing my life? We could make a visualization of this around the category too. So let's go ahead and just take a look at that. I'm just like nerding out because like I'm going to be making my own impossible list after we get off this call. So let's see, how balanced am I? Let's find a cool icon here. A scale here, a little pie chart. That'll be great. We can do slash and we'll say chart. Let's do a pie chart and show me that impossible list. And we want to see it by the category. So not the completed, but we want to see it by the category here. And now I get just really great visualization of, all right, how balanced am I? Looks like I'm doing really great on minimalism, but maybe I want to spend a little bit of time thinking about being a Renaissance man and adding that up a little bit. This is something that our CEO actually does for how his calendar is. He's like, how am I spending my week? And showing the distributions there. So just a few thoughts and things on that, which I think are really great. Joel, do you want to talk a little bit about about Impossible HQ and what y'all do, a little bit about your work? And of course, folks, please keep those questions coming.
Yeah, so Impossible is basically, it started off as a blog. I was literally just like, I'm going to go do this indoor triathlon and I'm going to try not to drown. And I got to keep myself accountable to doing this. So I was like, well, worst case scenario, I was like, I'm going to write a blog and my mom's going to read it. And I didn't have any expectations of people reading it.
Yeah.
Likes me, so I guess she'll probably read it. Maybe other people will, but if I put it out there, I'll have to hold myself accountable. I can't put something out there and not do it. So I started that, and then as this Impossible list kind of became the fuel for this. And since I've started it, it's like other people have taken the inspiration from it and we've started thousands of Impossible lists. So it's been one of these things that has continued to grow over time, and it basically became the fuel both for my blog, but it also was like the fuel for me to have like an interesting life. Is kind of how I framed it. As like I want to do interesting things, and so this was the framework it gave me. And then the blog became like, it started off just me talking about my races, and I was like, hey, I'm going here. You can still go read all of them. I'm like, other people edit their blogs in the past, they take down old posts. I'm like, no, it's kind of a story. So like I'll leave the story up. And so there's a bunch of old posts. It's just, me trying to learn how to race, trying to figure out this stuff. eventually people started being interested. They're like, hey, I want to run a triathlon. I want to do the different fitness challenges. How can I get involved? Or, can you teach me something? And so we created a bunch of different fitness programs. I continued to kind of level up the challenges I was taking on. I started taking on ultra endurance events. So anything past the marathon. I got challenged by a nonprofit called Pencils of Promise to run an ultra marathon and raise $25,000 for charity.
Nice.
And so ended up doing that, started, leaning into that. I did another project where I love that. And I got to see the school and I wanted to try to push myself again and see what else I could do. And so I launched a challenge called 777. And it was basically like, I did an ultra marathon and we built one school. What if we could run 7 ultra marathons on 7 continents and build 7 schools? And so we did that and built 7 schools through 777 and launched kind of our spinoff. It's not a nonprofit, it's not a 501c3, but it's kind of where we do all of our all of these giving back things kind of go through it. It's impossible.org, which is like our nonprofit. We give the money directly to the charities. We don't touch it. It goes right to them, and we're focused on entrepreneurship and education.
Nice.
And so that's been that. And then Impossibles continue to evolve. It started off as, like I said, it started off as a blog. It kind of turned into a brand. And now it's kind of a business. And so there's products we're coming out with. We have a bunch of apparel. We have Impossible shirts that people will wear when they're doing things on their impossible list. So it reminds them like it's always impossible until it's done. And we're scaling that apparel to actually be more technical and better performing, because a lot of the stuff, a lot of our readers are into adventure sports and athletics. And so we want to build really awesome gear for them. And then also we have some other physical products as well that we're going to be launching later this year. And so, the goal with Impossible is to really inspire people to push their limits and do something impossible. But beyond that, also like gear them up to do that, give them the tools like the Impossible list to like level up their life, and then, create other products that all support whatever their challenges are. So, that's what Impossible is.
That's so great. And one thing that just kind of resonated for me is, thinking back to your story about, being graduated from college, having done all the right things, and then, I can't do them. You've started a business, you've traveled the world, you've learned new things. You've kind of taken all of the things that were not missing at that time and really just knocked it out of the park, which I think is just so cool that you've had that ability to do so, and that it's kind of come full circle in that way, only to come around again. Nice. How did you then discover Coda?
I'm in the productivity space quite a bit. I'm an advisor to a startup called Woven, which is a productivity calendar. And I'm all over these types of apps and tools. And so I think we did something with I made a version of this in like WordPress tables. And then we made one with someone who will not be named. But then we did something with Coda, and I was like, okay, Coda makes sense. I get it. But I'm all over these. Like, I love the no-code tools. I love like the productivity tools, and I'm in this space a lot. So it's nice to have. We've had readers basically like, I've had an outline on how to create your own Impossible list on the website since 2010 or whatever it is. But sometimes people want a template. Sometimes people want, it's easier if you have examples to start off with, and then they go in and fill their own out. And so we were trying to do stuff with WordPress. That's not always great because not everybody has a blog already. Then I was like, oh, maybe I'll build an app. And I was like, that might be overkill. And there's also like a million bucket list type apps that all just like, they all sound cool, but they all have the same problem, which is that people want to make a list one time and never update it. And so an Impossible list is dynamic, it's growing, it's never done. And if you do it right, you never finish, right? Like there should always be more things that you find to push yourself in. So like if you get over fitness, or you're tired of running a business, or you want to do something different, like there's always other areas of your life you can kind of poke into and work on. And like I said before, it ruins all of your excuses to be bored ever again. So
And if anything, I think it's kind of like boredom can be the big excuse, right? Like, oh, I'm just so bored, I just can't do anything. Where it's like, well, no,
yeah,
you made a plan for yourself. It's here. Just pick
yeah.
something. Just
Well,
do something.
the thing I left off at the beginning was basically I was living in my parents' basement and I was watching Burn Notice all the time on Netflix, USA Today TV show,
Yes,
whatever. And
excellent. Bruce
and
Campbell.
yeah, it's actually not a bad show.
Yeah.
But I was just like watching Netflix all the time, and I was seeing these movies and seeing these shows, and like, wow, that would be cool to like do those, to have a story like that or be like that. And then I realized like I could just do this in my own life. And when I was able to like take some of the principles of like telling a good story and writing a good story and just being like, okay, if you're a character right now and you're like stuck in your parents' basement, well, what would you do? Well, I would try to find, any way out and try to find like one thing that interested me and like at least start doing that. I was like, okay, well, I guess we'll go do that. And so
Yeah.
that's really how I spun up. It was the boredom maybe I had a little bit of space there, and then I was like able to self-examine. And then I looked at this whole thing and I was like, well, 95% of it I can't even do, but the 5% that I can, I'm going to start on. And turns out life's not boring if you're not boring. So
yeah. Oh, I'm just like, yes, just cheering on over here. Like, yes, Joel, you're inspiring me. Yes, yes, yes. Awesome. So, what advice would you give for somebody who's kind of getting started with this doc or with Coda in general, like from your own experience of playing around in this space with productivity and no code in general?
Well, so now I want to add these other tabs that you made
Go for it.
to like my template. But
Yeah. Well, with the
I
beauty of
would say,
publishing, you could just add
yeah,
it to your doc and it's automatically here, and you don't even have to
yeah,
cite your sources.
yeah. I really like. I tell people to start small. The big difference and where you see all these people fall off is they say I want to start $1 billion company, and they've never even like done a side hustle, or they want to run they want to run an ultra marathon, but they need to lose 300 pounds. They can't run that far. They never run more than a 5K, and it's like start with where you're at and work from there and figure out what's reasonable. I started literally, and this is why my story is hilarious, is like, I say hilarious, not like a good story. It's hilarious. Like I couldn't imagine doing anything more than an indoor triathlon because I was scared to drown. And so it's like, that's pretty baseline. If you're like looking at endurance sports and you're like interested in getting into it, like you don't have to go run an ultra marathon today. Like you can dip your toe in the water, you can try it out. And if it's interesting, you can push yourself more. And what you're going to find is that even if you try something and you don't like it, even if you don't have a good time with it, you don't enjoy it, you realize like, oh, I didn't think I could do that, but I just did. So maybe there's another thing that like I actually want to do that I've been holding myself back on. So I'm just going to go do that instead. And so even if you don't end up loving triathlons or loving, this little side thing that you're working on, if you start small, like it starts to build not only your mindset, but it gives you real life reference points when you have a list and a reference point. So if you're feeling low, or if you're feeling like, I don't know if I can do this, or, who am I to go after this next goal of mine? You can come back and look at your list of, your own achievements or things that you've done. And remember that like at one point you thought those were impossible, and you can keep going. So
Yeah.
I would say, long way to say, start small. Don't overdo this, and don't spend too much time on your first iteration. Once you have the iteration and you have some more data, there's like I need to spend more time on it because you're coming up with the cool ways to like look back on stuff and like, the memories aspect. I really like that. That's like a good way to be like, surface things that you've done, and if you need a reminder of who you are and the things you're capable of, that's a good way to resurface that stuff.
Yeah. And I would be remiss in my duties if I didn't connect what you said to Coda. But I would also give people the same advice. Like if you're getting started, jumping into a fresh, clean Coda doc and you've never done it before, The same advice applies. Start small. Don't spend too much time on your first iteration. See what you like. Leave behind the things you don't like. Add more of what you like, and it can always be evolving. And that's my recommendation anytime you're getting started with a Coda project, but also like definitely applying that towards your life. And actually, Joel, I just thought of a
He's up with the how you do anything is how you do everything.
yeah, totally, exactly. Yes, yes. Oh, we are
There you
so it's clicking, it's clicking.
You got it.
The other thing, Joel, that I just thought of that would be really interesting to add to this is again thinking about the completed date. You could also add an automation to send you, hey, on this day a year ago, you did this, which could be kind of cool. I think there'd be a combination of like having a couple little buttons and then using the Gmail pack. I'd have to think a little bit more about the architecture, but it is possible. And I think that would be pretty sweet if that were, I know it's possible. It might be impossible today, but it will only be impossible until it's done, right?
I also now want to build a chart on this that like shows me like completed items over time.
Ooh, yeah. Let's just play with that right now. Get a little preview.
Okay.
Completed. We'll think of a better title later. We'll do a chart. I'm thinking a line chart probably makes more sense here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then from the impossible list. So this is a very standard pattern, everybody. The whole like one big table with everything, and then you make a list out of it. So then the horizontal axis will be, what is it called? Is that the completed? Yes,
Status?
yes, completed. The completed date. Yes, because there we go.
Yeah.
We've got the years along the bottom. And then let's see, the values would be would that be completed as well? Oh, no.
Activity.
There we go. And then count, we want it to maybe be the sum. Can we get that going? Oh, there's something I'm doing wrong. Here, let me go back to the
might
table.
not be the most accurate data. Like it's not like it's not
True. Let's go back here. So the completed date, and if that's our horizontal axis, then we would need to have for that. Oh, you know what it might be? Let's head back. It might be because this is such a big time frame. We might need to zoom in. Nope.
so you can't see it by month?
There might be, you know what? We might do, let's see what a Gantt chart would look like. I'm sure there's a way to do this, and my colleagues who are watching me would probably be like, no, quick, do it the other way. Oh, segment by status? Let's see what that's like. Okay, active and completed. We're getting closer. We want the count of the activities. Okay. Oh, you know what I think it is? Is because we only have like one or two things happening every year. Maybe that's why it's happening.
Yeah.
But I can do a little bit of homework on this and get it exactly right.
Yeah.
Do some tinkering.
That could be fun.
PowerPoint show. There we go. Here we go.
Yeah. See. Now you're giving me more things that I didn't even know was possible to do. So that's good. That's good. I can walk away with that.
Yeah. So here we can see. Oh, and then if we click, we can also see the details on it, which is kind of cool. But yeah. So some thoughts. And if we completed multiple things in a year, might be able to add a couple bits. So let's say that you actually ran a 5K in 2010 or 2012. I know it's messing with the narrative, but so we can see if we move in on 2012, then we get all the little timeline of all the things, and we can add some details there. Cool. Well, now I'm just percolating. That's always fun.
Yeah.
Cool. When you were building this doc, Joel, were there any kind of missteps or surprises where you kind of had to do a couple iterations, or did it come together pretty quickly for you?
I think it came together pretty quickly. The biggest thing I think I did at first was the just making the reference tables for the categories and everything. I think that was probably the biggest piece, but that was kind of it. Like, I mean, the goal was. Gee, I always forget sometimes. I don't forget, but like some people are so much better at templates than I am even. So it's like seeing you, I'm like, okay, I have ideas on how I can unlock this even more. And I'm like, God, I want to go play around. We can do Impossible List 2.0 now. But version 1.0, pretty straightforward. And we kind of wanted to keep it straightforward to like be as useful as possible and focus on getting it done. But it's a great point. Like the more stories you add, the more data that's in there, it becomes a historical record, and you can have it come up and be like, hey, let's
Mhm.
you know let's keep going, let's keep pushing. So
Yeah. Well, and the other thing I will say is the thing actually I appreciate so much about this template is its simplicity. Because if you think about what it's trying to do, right? It's trying to get you active on your life, get you moving,
mhm.
get you doing something, get you creating a sort of a path or place to put yourself.
Yep.
If you had added tons and tons of bells and whistles this early step, it might actually have gotten in the way of you being able to actually make that progress. So, even if docs are simple, sometimes it's the simple docs that actually make the biggest impact. I can't count the number of times I've seen somebody make something cool and huge and it's got all this stuff. But when it comes down to it, they're like, oh, yeah, but I ended up not really using most of that. I really just used
Yeah.
this section most of all. So, I think it's one of those things that having it be very clear when y'all are building your docs, what is the one thing that I need this doc to help me do? Optimize for that. And then once you've completed it, you can go ahead and start adding other things if you wanted to. So don't even feel bad about having a simple doc. That's always like the best thing, I think. Some of my favorite published docs are the ones that are super, super simple. And this one is leaving me feeling really inspired. And I love that it's just the lists that populate this area, and then you've added it and made it really valuable for yourself. Awesome. Well, let's go ahead see if there's any other questions coming in. All right, looks like we're doing all right. Fantastic. Joel, anything else that you'd like to share with the group, or thoughts, recommendations, brilliant nuggets of wisdom?
Well, other than I will probably have to come out with Impossible List 2.0 with all of our features and add-ons now. You guys can check out everything that we're doing at impossiblehq.com if you're interested
All
in it.
right. I'm going to add that to chat.
Yeah, and Impossible, you can get copies of this template right here. But if you want like details on a little bit more of the story behind it, or guidance and directions on how to like think about adding things to it, you can just go to impossiblelist.com. It just
Cool.
redirects to Impossible HQ, but it'll get you in to all the details on starting your own Impossible List, so you can start pushing yourself. And
Awesome.
like I said, at Impossible HQ, we have blog posts, we have training programs specifically for fitness stuff. We
Cool.
have a bunch of new stuff coming on the store as well, so you can check that out. And we have some new things dropping this summer. So both videos, inspire there's also a trailer on the homepage of impossiblehq.com. If you guys are watching this, you should go watch that, because it's a 2-minute trailer that tells you everything
Cool.
about Impossible. But yeah, we're coming out with media stuff, some stuff in the store this summer, and really excited about just enabling people to push after the things that they want to do.
Yes. Oh, what a great way to end a Friday session. That's fantastic. Well, Joel, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to share with us your doc, your story. I know I feel super inspired. Al feels super inspired. We're all feeling really
Thanks,
good.
Al.
Yeah, thanks, Al. We love you. If there's anything else that everybody needs, always remember you have an entire company ready and waiting to support you here at Coda. Feel free to get in touch with us, support@coda.io. Follow our Crowdcast. We're doing all kinds of maker stories and other events throughout the year. We'd love to see you there. I know this is always a big highlight of my day when I get to hang out with all of you. With that, thanks so much. We'll see you around. Check out Joel's great work and start pushing yourself. This weekend would be a great time to start with the template. All right. Thanks, Joel. See you later.
Thank you.
Bye.